Hello, bonjour, hello, hi, heya, and privyet, hockey fans. Welcome back to the Euro Puck Podcast, the show where two Brits talk all things European hockey as part of the Hockey Podcast Network. My name is Hayden, or Odd Man Rush, as you can see up there, and joining me once again is, of course, my fellow co-host, Chris Gadsby. Hey, Chris.
Hello.
How's it
back.
going?
It's just the two of us for the first time in like over a month.
It is, yeah, I know, right? I mean, We've done like the intros and the outros to each of the episodes for the last few, but other than that, we haven't just had the chance to, you and I, Chris, just sit down, have a little chat about European hockey. So, how are things going? We haven't really had a chat like to each other either. So how you been, man? How you been?
Yeah, it's been interesting. I can't believe it's like getting on for nearly Christmas.
Oh, tell me about it.
The Christmas adverts. I'm a Celebrity started, so...
Yes, for those of you who don't know, here in the UK, we have when you explain it to other people, it sounds kind of terrifying and very bad.
But... There are other versions, but I don't know how many other versions there are.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, like across the pond or elsewhere in Europe, there's a show we have here called I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, and the whole premise of it is we send a load of, like, C-listers through Z-listers, all the way to the Australian jungle to go and eat like donkey parts and sit in like cages full of spiders. Loads of bugs and stuff. And then eventually
they're doing it in Wales this year.
Yeah, because of the lockdowns and stuff, they've had to do it in Wales, so it doesn't quite have the same appeal to it. But
I don't know if America has one. Hang on.
That'd be worth looking up actually, because
I know that like America has got like Dancing with the Stars, which is their version of Strictly Come Dancing, and all the rest of it. Oh yeah, apparently they do, and they go to Costa Rica.
Oh well,
there you go. So you'll understand. Apparently, you'll understand what it is. Apparently, well, they did it. Apparently, by the look of it, it doesn't really take off.
I see.
They did two series, one in 2003, one in 2009, and that seems to be all they've done.
I guess that just goes to show you us British people over here are a little bit sadistic compared to the rest of the world.
We've done it for 20 years now. But basically, if a celebrity shows a weakness, we make them do horrible stuff.
Yeah, 'tis the British way, eh, Chris? But anyway, let's talk about some hockey, shall we, folks? Instead of talking about crappy TV. We're just going to take you through all of the leagues that we usually take you through. We've got about 9 or 10 different leagues to kind of blitz you through because, like we mentioned, it's been about a month since we last took you through them. Just to let you know, today is Tuesday the 17th of November. I looked at my podcast notes that I write when we do these normal episodes, Chris, and the last time I'd written it...
notes?
Yeah, exactly. I've got notes of all the topics and stuff. See, I've got to be somewhat prepared, but... I noticed that the last time I'd written something for it was like Tuesday the 12th of October, so it really does go to show you like how much time it's been since we've actually done an episode like this. But I will bring up the stats here, and you can kind of see them, but it's because there's so many teams here with the KHL. I was looking for a tweet from the KHL to give us the up-to-date standings today, but I couldn't find one, so we're going to use flash scores as with the rest of the leagues. So we're going to take you through the Continental Hockey League standings so far as it stands on the 17th of November. There have been a few games that have been played today also, so I'm not sure if these stats are going to add those into it. Chris, do you have the stats up with you, or do you want me to take them?
I've got the standings up with me. I'm just having a look at the standings I've got will have taken into account today's. Let me just have a look.
Because I've got the Flash Scores one. I've got the Flash Scores one on the screen.
Let me just have a look on Flash Scores as well and see if the ones you've got up are the right ones. Yes, they are. So what you've got up now is the up-to-date stuff.
Okay, perfect. So I will take you through these, and then Chris, I'll get your thoughts on how you feel. We're about 40% of the way through the season, I would say. So I'll get your thoughts on that. So in the Western Conference, we'll start with the Western Conference. We have CSKA Moscow up in first, 43 points in 27 games. Only lost 7 games this year and 4 in regulation, so they're doing quite well for themselves. SKA St. Petersburg, they take second place. You may notice that Lokomotiv is in third place with 1 more point. It's because Lokomotiv is in the same division as CSKA Moscow. So first and second are the top teams in their division. So that might be why there's a bit of a disparity in the amount of points. So CSKA Moscow at first. Then you have SK St. Petersburg in second. Lokomotiv in third. Dynamo Moscow and Dynamo Minsk in fourth and fifth, both tied with 30 points in 25 games. Then you have Spartak Moscow in sixth place. Sevastopol Sharopovats in seventh place. And Vityaz Podolsk in eighth place. Then in ninth place with about 5, 6, maybe 7 games back from pretty much the rest of the teams in the Western Conference. Jokerit, of course, the Finnish side, 23 points, so by the time they've made those games up, they're going to be way in a playoff spot. They're going to knock one of those teams out. Then HC Sochi, 18 points in 25 games, and in the bottom place, having just erased a losing streak of, was it 10 games, Chris?
14.
14, oh geez.
14
Dinamo
games
Riga.
they've lost.
Yeah,
they've lost what? 16, 18 games in total, and 14 of those is in a row. And yeah, they snapped a 14-game losing streak by beating Kunlun Red Star, who were obviously bottom of the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, and actually, Dinamo Riga have lost 20 games this season because they've got 4 in overtime or shootout and 16 in regulation. They've only won 3 games this year, and one of them came against Kunlun recently. So 2 regulation wins in 23 games. To be fair, Dinamo Riga have dealt with a lot of issues with the virus that's been going around. So, and a lot of quarantines and a lot of lockdowns, a lot of players being out. So that's one of the reasons, but still a very tough situation for Dinamo Riga to be in. They're only 8 points back.
Pulled it back with 4.5 minutes to go. They were, 5-3 finish? Yeah, with so that was in the second period. But yeah, they were 3-2 down in the second period. They got 2 goals in the last minute and 15 seconds of the second period to go 4-3 up.
Sometimes you just need a bit of a push from somewhere. They never quite figure out where it's going to come from most of the time, but the good thing is they got themselves another regulation win, one that they really needed. And then we move on to the...
They swapped the netminder. So they swapped the netminder in the first period.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he'd conceded. I don't know exactly how many he'd conceded at the time, but they had 12 shots in the first period and scored 2 of them, and he got swapped out at 9:02. So if you just take averages, he probably let in 2 from 6 and then got swapped out.
Ouch.
At the start of the game.
Nothing to say other than ouch. Then we'll move on to the Eastern Conference now.
Was his own. I was going to say that was his only game, Zane McIntyre. So he's played one game, a save percentage of .714 and a goals against average of 13.2.
Oh my!
Former Boston Bruins, Zane McIntyre.
Yes, indeed. So the Eastern Conference now. We'll take a look at them. So in first place we have Akbars Kazan with 40 points. They're 3 points back from CSKA Moscow, so they're second place in the league, Akbars Kazan, but topping the Eastern Conference. Avangard Omsk in second place at the top of their division. Traktor Chelyabinsk has had a bit of a resurgence in recent weeks. They were sitting down towards the 8th, 9th, 10th spot. They've jumped up to third place with 38 points in 27 games. Then you've got Avto Mobilist Yekaterinburg in 4th place with 37 points. Metallurg Magnitogorsk in 5th place with 34 points. Salavat Yuleev in 6th place, tied with 34 points, but 1 more game played. Sibir Novosibirsk have 25 points. There's a real drop-off between 6th and 7th. It really is a tale of 2 halves for the Eastern Conference so far this season. Baris Nur-Sultan or Baris Astana, they have 25 points for 8th place. Torpedo, they are in 9th place. Amur Habarovsk in 10th place. Neftahimic in 11th place, and then the aforementioned Kunlun Red Star in the 12th and final place in the Eastern Conference. I mean, they may have lost against Dinamo Riga, but they're still above them in the standings, so, at least they could take some solace from that.
That is true.
So, Chris, what do you think about where the KHL is at so far this season? Obviously, we've talked about it a lot as the weeks have gone by. It was one of, if not the first league to start up this season. We've very much seen their progression as the weeks have gone on. Yeah, we kind of took a 4 or 5 week hiatus from it while we were talking to a bunch of guests. But what are your thoughts on the differences in the conferences? Do you see any front runners for maybe the teams that are going on deep playoff runs? Maybe some teams that you expected to drop off halfway through this stint but are still keeping going? Some teams that have jumped up from the bottom that have kind of had a bit of a resurgence? Talk to me.
Yeah, I mean, it is starting to become kind of what we'd expect. If you look at the West, CSKA, SKA up at the top. In the East, Akbars Kazan up at the top. The teams that you would expect to be up there are coming up there. I mean, as you mentioned, Traktor Chelyabinsk, they're on a 4-game winning streak now, and that includes a victory over Akbars Kazan by 2-1 on the 12th, so a few days ago now. So it is, coming to them. Yekaterinburg, again, they were on at least a 4-game streak as far back as this form guide goes until they had a shutout defeat against Akbars Kazan yesterday. But yeah, kind of as we expected, obviously kind of Kunlun, who had all the problems at the start of the season, down at the bottom, and Dinamo Riga, who were on a 14-game losing streak before they got the win. I mean, they'd come close. I mean, they took Yekaterinburg to overtime, but it's an interesting one, and the team they got the victory against, of course, is bottom of the East. The other team that was struggling, but I think, as you said, in the West, when Jokerit play all their games in hand, you can expect them to be up in around third, fourth, fifth position, and then everything kind of with Dinamo Riga, Sochi, and Podolsk down near the bottom, particularly with Sheriff-Vetsk having some games in hand. It's all kind of as you would expect, I think, particularly in the West.
Definitely. But the one question I do want to ask you, Chris, is regarding the Eastern Conference. Like I mentioned as I was taking you through them, sort of first to sixth place are kind of locked in as teams that are, if everything keeps going to plan, they're going to make the playoffs. And then you've got kind of the rest of the 6 teams in the league that are battling for those final 2 places. Do you think that we've kind of found the top 6 teams in the Eastern Conference? Do you think they've separated the wheat from the chaff here and gone, look, these 6 teams are going to finish in some order, but they're all going to be 1 from 6th. And then do you think there's a chance that maybe one of the 7th, 8th, 9th place teams could jump up above these teams? Because I've got to be honest, the Eastern Conference sides, all of those teams in the top 6 are very, very good teams. They are all very worthy of being there. They are teams that I would not be surprised if any of them topped or were second place in the Eastern Conference. So the fact that you've got such a log jam from 1st to 6th, because there's only, 6 points difference from 1st to 6th, and 2nd to 6th is 2 points difference, so or 3rd to 6th is 4 points.
Yeah, and after Mobilist have got 2 games in hand over the top, so they could go top. I think the thing you've got to watch out for in the East is down in the 8th seed, Barcelona Sultan at the moment. They've got 5 games in hand over those teams around them.
That's a good point.
So they could win those. I mean, if you were to win all 5, say, that puts them on 35 points. Then all of a sudden you've got 7 teams that have broken away from the rest, and you've got the remaining 5 teams who are battling it out for that one spot. I think even at this early stage, you could rule out Kunlun and Nizhny Kamsk. So you're looking at kind of probably Sibir, Torpedo, and Amur who will be battling it out for that last spot, and then even Torpedo have got 3 games in hand on those other 2. So it is really, I think a lot of it is going to come down to see how the results go against each other.
Yes.
And then particularly, I mean, F1 every season, you look at the running, if you've got one of the teams that's coming up against Sochi, Riga and Kunlun towards the end, and another team coming up against CSKA, SKA and Akbars, then you start to think, okay, this team might be the one that sneaks in. But I think particularly in the East, we're definitely looking at a tale of 2 halves, as you said, 6 at the top, 6 at the bottom, and that maybe even goes to 7 and 5 in a few weeks' time with the games in hand sorting themselves out.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of Baris and Jokerit, they were the 2 teams that, other than Dinamo Riga, had to be locked in their 2-week quarantines because of their own government guidelines. So I guess you could say it might be a bit of a bonus to them, the fact that they might be down outside of the playoffs like Jokerit are in 9th place, or Baris just hanging on to a playoff berth at the moment. But the fact that they've got so many games in hand, they're already aware of the landscape of the league and kind of, all of these teams have played 6, 7 more games than we have. Okay, let's look at our schedule. We might be able to jump up quite high and leapfrog a couple of teams here. Because, I mean, in the Western Conference, we talked a lot about the Eastern Conference, but the Western Conference, we've got Dynamo Minsk that are still having a really good season. They're still pretty high up there. Spartak Moscow had a poor start to the year, but they've jumped up. And Sevastopol Sharapovets, they're a team that hasn't really been a playoff contender in recent years. So the fact that they're sitting in a playoff berth, they're 5 games ahead of Jokerit, and they might be able to leapfrog them, but they're not sitting in the 8th place. They're sitting in the 7th place with 2 games in hand on the 8th place. So it might be Vityaz moves out of the playoffs when Jokerit jumps up. So there's a couple of teams here that in seasons past, and I think given the fact that the salary cap has been moved to a hard salary cap this year, and there's a bit more parity between the league, a lot of these teams, there's a few teams that you're looking at going, okay, we know that the top teams are going to stay at the top. But there are a couple of teams that were like, I wasn't quite expecting them to be this high up in the standings. What do you think about that, Chris?
Yeah. I think the having the hard cap has certainly brought it into a bit more of a level playing field.
Yeah.
I think that, the teams at the top, I mean, CSK have got an 8-point lead over the SK St. Petersburg now. And I think those teams, similarly to what we've seen in the NHL before, and we spoke about when we did the Brits on Bruins podcast, in that there will be some players that have potentially taken a bit of a lower salary this year to stay on the team because they know they're going to end up in the conference or the Gagarin Cup finals. And, we say, well, then they've gone to the players and gone, look, if you each take a cut of 200k, for example, and we keep this team together, we know we're going to be deep in the playoff run and we'll hit the salary. But it has brought the kind of the midfield into more of a level playing field, which I think is really good. I think it gets a bit boring if you see all the same teams in the playoffs all the time. And we saw that over here in the UK when you've only got a 10-team league and 8 of them make the playoffs.
Yeah.
And you can at the start of the season you can go, well, I know who 6 of the 8 are going to be.
Yeah, exactly. It's
just 9 times out of 10. So
yeah, it's just one of those situations where, like, I completely agree with you. It just makes the whole league more exciting when you've got more teams that are in the running. Obviously, NHL fans will have their own thoughts on the salary cap because, for the most part, those teams are making millions and millions and millions of dollars. So whether they need a salary cap or not, that's certainly up for debate. But a league like the Continental Hockey League, where there isn't that, there's a lot of differing salary numbers going around. Some teams can spend way over the cap. Some teams can only just make it to the cap. It really does make a difference where some of these players are going, okay, I could either stay with this team and potentially go to the finals like you mentioned, or I could go to a different team and become one of the highest paid players on the roster, secure like my finances for the future and be in a good position to succeed moving forwards, which is exactly what you want at the end of the day. So, so the KHL, those are the standings as it is. We had a kind of moved into a bigger chat about the KHL as a whole, kind of a like half season review as we got there, but still very interesting nonetheless. Let's move on to the Swedish Hockey League now. Let's take a look at the Swedish Hockey League stats because they are about a dozen games, 15, 16 games into their season. Chris, do you have the Swedish Hockey League stats there? And do you want to take us through them?
I can get it up if you give me 2 seconds.
Sure, that'd be wonderful. There's certainly a couple of teams that are taking, kind of pushing themselves out in front. There's a bit of a log jam within the middle part, and there's certainly a couple of teams that wish they'd maybe started this season a little bit better. So, Chris, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, so to the surprise of probably nobody, you've got Frölunda up at the top. I mean, we know what Frölunda are like. However, with Rögle behind them in second, they've got 3 games in hand and they're only 3 points behind. Yeah. So they could go up to the top. Of course, these are both teams that should have been in the Champions Hockey League when that before that got cancelled for the year. But again, it is kind of relatively similar to what you would expect. So you've got the Vasco Lakers are up there, Skellefteå are up there, Lilea are just outside, but they've struggled with the amount of games that they've been playing as well. So expect them to jump up somewhat. Then down at the bottom, Linkoping's there at the bottom. They've got 9 points, but they've played fewer games than anybody else. And in fact, they are playing today, starting in just over half an hour, our time. They're coming up against Oskarshamn, who are in 4th at the moment. So an interesting one there. But again, Sweden is one. It's an interesting one where I've not really seen, and keeping my eye on, but I haven't seen obviously the like postponements and stuff being particularly well advertised.
Yeah.
But it's clear that with some teams having played 17 and some having played 11, that there obviously has been some issues in that. Brinas not having a good time of things at the moment. They've lost their last 5, as I said, as far as the form guide goes back. So that's not too well for them. I mean, you take those 5 off. I mean, they started when they were 7 games in. They'd won 4, lost 1, and so played 4, won 4 and lost 3. Right. So they were doing all right, but yeah, they've gone on a big losing streak. So they found themselves plummet down the standings. But there's nobody else other than the top 2 who were on winning streaks until Frölunda got shut out against Leksand last night, and then Rögle in the battle at the top, they lost in overtime by 6 goals to 5 to Örebro, and so they at least picked up another point, but. The teams at the top, they were, on good winning streaks, but nobody else is really putting form together. They're all kind of, winning, then losing, then winning. So it is quite tight again in the midfield. Don't forget that the Swedish Hockey League is one where you get 3 points for a win. So when you consider that 4th place is on 25 and 8th place is on 22. That's only one game.
Yeah, very
so
true.
You've got 5 teams within one game of each other. But there is still a long way to go in the Swedish league. But again, we're already starting to see those teams at the top getting away from the teams at the bottom. But as I said, with the likes of Lelea, who have got 5 games in hand on Frölunda, that's a potential 15 points. So that takes them up to 37. Oskarshamn have got 3 games in hand, so that's another potential 9, which takes them to 34. So I think it's a lot, it has the potential to be a lot tighter than the league makes it look at the moment, simply because of the games in hand.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of Oskarshamn, were they in the Swedish Hockey League last year? Because I don't recognise their name. That might just be because I'm aware of a few teams, but every single other team in the Swedish Hockey League I recognise, and I've known of them for quite a while. But Oskarshamn has been one that I've been like, oh,
yeah, they were
okay, interesting.
They didn't do very well. They went on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 game losing streak towards the end of the last season.
Yikes. Well, I mean, that's the reason I wanted to bring them up, is the fact that I didn't really recognise them as a team, but the fact that they're sitting in 4th place in the league at the moment is pretty impressive, especially considering how they ended last season.
I'll just check, but I believe that they may have been the side which... just check. I believe they may have been the side which should have been involved in the relegation playout.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so they came bottom of the league last season.
Okay.
And then Leksands being 13th, so... Leksands, I think, are not doing too well again this time, are they? Round
they're doing okay. They're ninth place.
Yeah,
they're ninth place.
But yeah, they should have been in the relegation playoff, but then it got cancelled and they stayed in.
I mean, and then considering they're now sitting 4th place in the league, that's a pretty strong resurgence. It just goes to show you that, if things change slightly or circumstances change somewhat, the difference it can make to some of these teams. So fair play to them. I'm just wary of the time, so we should probably move on to some of the other leagues.
Yes,
otherwise, because we've got other topics to talk
race
about.
Through some of the smaller ones. But...
Yeah, for sure. But let's move on to the next biggest league in Europe, and that is the Finnish Liga, there's actually a game taking place at the moment between Tappara and Vasen Sport. So I'll take you through the Finnish Liga quickly. We have Eels up at the top, 33 points in 14 games. Then you have Lukko in 2nd, Helsinki in 3rd, the Pelicans in 4th, Karpat in 5th, Kuku in 6th, Kalpa in 7th, Tappara, who's currently playing. They are currently in 8th place because they're winning that game, but before the game was played, they were sitting in 9th, and TPS Turku was in 8th. Then you have Assat in 10th, JYP, Jyväskylä in 11th, Saipa in 12th, Hämeenlinna in 13th, Vasen Sport in 14th, and Jukurit in 15th. And it's important to mention that between 1st and 6th place, there is only 10 points difference, which sounds like a huge amount, but like Chris mentioned, some of these European leagues, they do 3 points for a win, and I'm pretty sure, the Finnish Liga is.
The Finnish Liga does.
Yep, Finnish Liga is, so 10 points difference isn't really a huge amount of difference. We're talking 2-3 games in hand, and the kind of other play-in places, there's a difference of only 2 points, and the difference between 7th and, 12th is what? Less than 10 points again. So still plenty of games to play in the Finnish League, I think is the assumption we can make, Chris, but we're now starting to see a bit of the changes, isn't there?
Yeah, you can see the change, and I think the thing that's key to mention with the Liga is that they haven't had the postponement troubles that the SHL have had.
Yes.
If you look at the games played, they're all very, closer in line. But again, we're seeing, Ilves out at the top having won and scored 6 goals in 3 of the last 5 games, including a 6-0 shutout over Vasen Sport on the 14th. So what would that be? Saturday. And then, at the bottom, you're getting the teams. But even Jukurit right at the bottom, they're staying in there. They're only one, they've got a game in hand. If they were to win that game in hand, then jump up to 12. So the Liga is quite tight. And I think we might see quite a few teams battling for the round of, they call it the 8 finals. I'll call it the round of 16, even though it's not. But in the playoffs in a few months' time.
Absolutely, and how exciting would it be to have a very competitive end to the Finnish Liga? It's nice to have a group of teams battling it out for those final 2 spots or final 2-3 spots, as opposed to it practically being set and ready to go 2 months before the season is over. So that's the Finnish Liga. Once again, compared to some of the other leagues, the Liga hasn't been up and running as long as some of the other leagues, whereas some of the leagues like the Swedish Hockey League, they've dealt with their own postponement issues because of the virus. So they've had their own issues, whereas the Liga's like, we're just, quietly getting on with our season, playing our games, getting some results. So let's move on to a league that had dealt with a lot of postponement issues within recent weeks and months, and that is the Swiss National League, or the National League as it's called now. I think they've changed it from the National League A, it's just the National League now. I'm not 100% sure, but Chris, do you want to take us through the standings? Because there's some interesting results here, and a lot of teams very close on either side of the table.
Yeah, can do. I'd loaded up the extra league, but yeah.
Oh, my bad.
No, it's all right. The Swiss League. So you got Lausanne at the top. As you said, they've been hit. They had a brief suspension of the season, if I remember correctly. So we're talking kind of 8 to 10 games played here. But Lausanne up at the top, who are on a long winning streak, at least 5 games there and a couple of overtime victories in there as well. So they've played 10 and they've already got 22 points from those games. So that is 3 points for a win and 2 points for an overtime win. So they're up at the top along with Zug, and then you've got Jeanette Fribourg as well. I think just behind them. Then you've got Genevieve Servette. Now they've got 2 games in hand, so they could easily go top. So it's very getting tight towards the top. Zurich, again, I think they did have some issues.
Did. Yeah.
But they've played more games than anybody else, and they're down in 5th. So they're a little bit away from where they would perhaps like to be. Then you've got Lugano, who are only 3 points behind them, but with 3 games in hand. Then you've got the 8 finals, Rapperswil, Ambia Piotta, SC Bern, which are lower than I thought they'd been. They've lost the last 5 games, so not a good time for them. Then we've got Biel, the Lagno Tigers, and Davos again, another team with plenty of Champions Hockey League history in them, down at the bottom of the table in the relegation group.
Yeah, I was going to say, the fact that Bern and Davos, like 2 teams that, UK fans will know from the Champions Hockey League, Swiss fans will know that they're some of the best, or have been some of the most consistent teams in the league, constantly making the Champions Hockey League and doing quite well in the Champions Hockey League, all things said and done. But yeah, it's really interesting to see the differences. We've got Zug and Lausanne at the top and Fribourg, Gotteren, and I like the fact that this league is kind of a bit more up in the air at the moment. I know that's largely due to the postponements that they've been having, but the fact that it is really still like anybody's to play for at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, and something that I'm just looking up. I find it interesting that so since in the last kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so the last 5 years, I'm looking at SC Bern here in particular. They have been top of the attendance.
Yes.
European attendance. And they've had 3 championships and 2 semi-final losses.
Yeah.
In that. So is it, are potentially the lack of fans hurting teams with bigger attendances more? You look at it. If we take a look at SC Bern, they were 9th last year as well.
Yeah.
Out of the 12 teams, so they didn't have a good year last year. And then when they were champions in 2015-16, they were in 8th in the regular season and then became the champions. But it's is the lack of attendance hurting teams like that more? It's great to have different teams up at the top. Don't get me wrong, but it's interesting to see why some of the teams are struggling a bit more.
Yeah, there's certainly a fair argument to make, especially for a team like SC Bern and Davos, that they might not have the biggest crowd, but they have a very consistent crowd because they've been a historically successful team all these years. And maybe on the flip side, maybe it's the fact that the Berns and the Davoses, they're kind of in that next part of the championship cycle where, like with NHL teams where they win a cup or go deep in the playoffs a few times and they have to go through a bit of a rebuild. Maybe it's not so much a rebuild in the Swiss League because they're obviously set up completely differently. But maybe the fact that, some of the players are either getting on a little bit, getting older and starting to retire, or they're starting to move on to different teams, and kind of the championship core that they had on their team, coupled with the fact that like a team like Bern that gets lots of fans the most fans in Europe, maybe all of these little factors lead into them kind of dropping in the standings over the last couple of years and leads to the teams that may have struggled in recent years, now they've got a bit of a championship-ready core together, they can then make the next step. It's kind of the constant cycle of professional sports, really, isn't it, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen, like, if you look at the data with football over here, we've seen that since it returned with no fans, the percentage of away teams that are winning the games is dramatically higher. So there is a lot of evidence to suggest that, the presence of, is it 16,000, I think it is, at Bern, on average, really would make a difference in the same way that the fans at football do make a difference. But yeah, Lausanne going really well at the top. They've won, as I said, at least the last 5 games. And I think what's interesting is that when you look at it on flash scores, as you would expect, really, the teams at the top have got, 4 losses between them in the last 20 games they've played combined. And then so that's the top 4 teams. The bottom 4 teams have only got 3 wins between them in the last 20 games combined.
Yeah.
I know that it might be some of them are against each other, but you know what I mean. So you really get the kind of the wall of green and the wall of red underneath on the table.
It's very much, I feel like we're starting to see the calm before the storm with the Swiss League, where within, say, if we came back to this in 3 weeks, there'd be a huge distance between kind of 4th place and 10th place, let alone the top and the bottom of the league. So the Swiss National League is going to be one to keep an eye out on. Hopefully they don't deal with many more postponed games or rescheduled games. Hopefully they can kind of figure things out. I'd love to see that because I quite like the Swiss League. They've got a special place in my heart, So let's move on to, we're about halfway through these leagues now, but these ones, we're now moving on to some of the leagues that, we're just going to keep you up to date, not talk a huge amount about because they're not necessarily the biggest leagues. And the next one is the Czech Extraliga, which has a lot of games going on right now as we speak, according to the Flash Scores stats. So we have, as it stands right now, including some of the scores that are being put in place. They might put that as a disclaimer because it might not be necessarily correct by the time the games are over, because it's like, if this team's winning 1-0, then we'll count it as they're winning the game. So, as it stands right now, HC Pilsen is in first place, Oceleri Trinek in second, Sparta Prague in third, with Mountfield HK in fourth. So they're all in the quarterfinal round for the playoffs when that comes around in a long time. Then HC Liberec in fifth place, Karlovy Vary in sixth place, Madla Boleslav in seventh, Vitavice in eighth, Kometa Brno in ninth, Zlin in 10th, Olomouc in 11th, Litvinov in 12th, Pardubice, that's the one. And then Cesk Budjovic. Because I've got my webcam wire right in the way of some of these names, so I'm having to dart my head between each to try and read it. And that I can't pronounce it, but go for it.
We're seeing again here teams at the top, your Pilsen, your Spartan Prague, your Trinek, your Mountfield. They're the teams you'd expect to be up there. And again, the teams at the bottom, as I said, the teams 3 at the bottom haven't won in the last 5 games as we're recording this, apart from the fact that Pardubice are winning now.
Yeah.
But again, we're seeing that gap. A lot of there's some that have played more games. The Czech league, again, they had a 2-week suspension just to try and curb any increasing viruses. I can't wait to. Hopefully these vaccines are going to be successful and we can start to move past this within the next kind of 6-9 months. It looks promising, but we won't count our chickens. But a lot of the teams have played the same. You're already seeing that huge gap opening up between the teams at the top and the bottom. You've got it is a long way back. Let's take 3 games. That's a potential 9 points. So you'd have to be on 18 really to get up near the top. So you're looking at a top 6, bottom 6 already, or bottom 8, should I say? And again, teams at the bottom, they're just really just not doing. They're not getting the goals that they need to get. I think the goaltending on a lot has been, if you take Cesk Budjovic, they lost 6-3, 5-1 in the last 2 games, 3-2, 2-1 in overtime is unlucky, good goaltending there, but then 5-4 again, they're just not doing well. 42 goals conceded in 10 games. You're losing each game by 4 goals to 2 on average. It's just not, you're not going to win hockey games doing that. We'll have to, again, see how that goes over the next few weeks. But I think similarly to the rest of the leagues, we're going to start seeing that split with the teams that we're used to seeing. So your Mountfields, your Billy Tibby Liberec, that sort of thing, getting up near the top.
Absolutely. I think given the fact that, like we mentioned with the Swiss League, that's kind of in the calm before the storm, even though the Czech League has played roughly the same amount of games, if not slightly less, we've already kind of seen the storm arrive and blow through the Czech League in the sense that, I mean, 14th place to first place, 26 points difference already. So it's kind of like, okay, 10 games into the season, we're already seeing the teams that are going to really struggle to climb their way up the standings. Kind of like a lot of these teams have kind of dug their graves a little bit already this season, and now they're going to have to try and figure out a way to climb back out of it.
The way in the extra league, with there being 12 out of the 14 teams getting into the playoffs, obviously those top 4 teams, so at the minute, Liberec, Karlovy, Madla Boleslav and Vitkovice, the gap there is so high between those 4 and the 4 below them that it's almost a sense of, it expands the playoffs to get more teams into it. And yeah, don't get me wrong, that's great. But, you kind of know, unless there's like a bit of an upset, right, those top 4, you would, place good money on 3 of those top 4 at least getting through.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think also the fact that, like you mentioned, 12 teams in the league, the 12th place team at the moment, the final team that has a playoff spot right now, has 4 points in 7 games. Like, it's just kind of like, really? Is that how we're going to play this? But, we don't run the Czech Extraliga. They obviously know a lot more than we do, and we're just here to sit here and talk about the scores that take place. So we've got 5 kind of minor European leagues. I say minor European leagues, kind of lesser known European leagues to look at now. So we'll just quickly blitz through these before we get onto some of the news topics. We haven't got a huge amount of news to talk about this week, but some things that we do want to talk about. So, Chris, do you want to take us through the Ice Hockey League, the Austrian League now? That would be very helpful.
Austrian Ice Hockey League, yep, can do that. So, 11 teams in this. Graz 99 is currently top of the league. Obviously, Ben Bouncer's Graz 99ers, although he's out with an injury at the moment.
Indeed.
So, yeah, they're at the top. Then the Vienna Capitals, Klagenfurt, Ferivar, AV19, and then Red Bull Salzburg. Again, kind of the teams you'd expect. Down near the bottom, Velak, Steinbeck BW, Tikvie, Innsbruck, and Bolzano, again, struggling near the bottom. The leagues, given the kind of the games in hand they've got, again, it's been disrupted a bit. So Bolzano have got 5 games in hand over the teams at the top. And again, with 3 points for a win, they could easily climb up the table.
Yeah.
But again, as we said, like before we had our string of guests, it's kind of a bit too early, really, to go deep into it. We'll have to wait and see. I know the intention is for a guest next week, but in a fortnight's time, we'll see if anything is kind of happening.
Absolutely, and given the fact that Bolzano have only played 5 games compared to teams that have played 10 games, 8 games, 9 games, there's perfectly the potential for them to jump up. There's obviously a lot of teams that might be sitting in a playoff spot, but the next team above them is only a couple of points ahead, and they've got 3 more games played than them. So, yeah, it's kind of like, it's really interesting to see the different stages each of the European leagues are at, and kind of be like, okay, well, this one, there's still plenty of hockey left to play. There's this much difference, whereas other ones are like, oh, we're halfway through the league, and like we already know the majority of the teams that are probably going to make the playoffs. So that's quite an interesting one. And Flash Scores has really wanted to sit there and load the whole time it's been on, so we haven't actually seen like the matches played from some of the teams. But thanks, Flash Scores, appreciate that. Anyway, let's move on to let's do the Polish league next.
Okay.
Yes, this is the Polish league next. Yeah, I tried to make sure I got them in order of the order that I wrote them in notes. And we've got a couple of teams here. One team's on a really long winning streak. One team's on a really long losing streak. But we're really starting to see a huge gap between the teams that are in playoff spots. We've got it's kind of a 2-horse race at the moment within the Polish league. We've got Tichy and Jastrzębie up in first and second, 44 points and 39 points respectively. Although Jastrzębie are on a 5-game winning streak at the moment, and Tichy are on a 4-game winning streak and have won 4 of their last 5. So, Tichy have only lost 2 games this entire season so far. 68 goals on the season to 42 conceded. So, they were the team that was going to make it to the Champions Hockey League this year, and they're showing why they deserve to be there. Then Una Oshvashim, obviously Elisa Sherbatov's team, 31 points to kind of comfortably take 3rd place, although Torrent is 1 point behind them with 3 games in hand. So will they stay there? I highly doubt it. Katowice have 27 points in 15 games. Then you have MMKS Podhale in 6th place. Krakow, interestingly, down in 7th place. They're a team that we've consistently seen in the Champions Hockey League year in, year out. They're struggling to keep their place. However, that said, in 8th place, Sanok with 17 points in one more game played. So kind of the top 7 are kind of decided as of right now. Yes, Sanok could jump in if they go on a bit of a winning streak. Both Krakow and Sanok have won kind of 2-3 games in their last 5. Then you have Zagłębie and Gdansk, who have really not had a very good start to the season, and I get the feeling it's going to continue that way. Zagłębie with a 5-game losing streak in 9th place, 5 points in 17 games on the season. 1 win and 2 overtime losses is where they've got their points. And then Gdansk, 1 win on the season, no overtime wins, no overtime losses. So they're 1-15-0, 79 goals allowed to the 20 they've scored. Yeah, they've got a game in hand on Zagłębie, but they've won one of their most recent games, but it's not looking good.
Which was against Zagłębie.
There you go. So it's not looking good for these bottom teams, is it?
So Zagłębie are currently on a 10-game losing streak.
Oh,
they have won 1 game all season, which was against Dansk by 8 goals to 5.
Okay.
And then Dansk were on a 14-game losing streak, and then they won. Then they shut out Zagłębie by 3 goals to 0 earlier on this week to get their only win. So the only wins for Zagłębie and Dansk have come against each other. So
the Polish League, everyone.
I think, as you said, I think the 8 teams in the playoffs, even at this early stage, are pretty much sewn up. Everyone, welcome Dansk and Zagłębie, the Edinburgh Capitals of the Polish League.
Oh, well, I mean, somebody's got to do it. I guess this year it's Zagłębie and Gdansk.
That's true.
So.
I told you, it's because the Dansk players are so tired from travelling to the south every week.
That's probably it, though.
When we did the map.
Yeah, it's probably it, though. And they're probably not flying. They're probably taking, coach trips every single time. That must be exhausting. But anyway, let's move on to the Danish Metaligaen next. Only 9 teams in this league with...
Dansk went 3 games in a row without scoring.
Oh, jeez. Now, there's a really interesting thing here on Free Sports, according to the Danish Meta League. A lot of teams have 0.5 points this season, according to
let me have a look.
Flash scores. Rungsted, I'll take you through them as Chris gets up. Rungsted in first place with 32.5 points. Not quite sure what that means. Aalborg with 30 points to take second place. So Aalborg had been at the top of the league pretty much the entire year when we last checked on them. They're now technically 2.5 points back. Esbjerg Energy, 29.5 points to take third place. Frederikshavn, they are in fourth place with 22.5 points. So the top 3 teams have gotten a bit of a gap over the rest of the league. Sondersjijk, they have 20 points to take 5th place. The Herning Blue Fox, 19.5 points to take 6th place. Herlev in 7th place with 13.5. So it's very much the top 3 teams. Then the next 3 teams are kind of in their own separate little inter battles. And then you have Herlev in 7th place. You have the Mighty Bulls in 8th place, and then the Odense Bulldogs. They're very close to being in the playoffs, so the parity between kind of the bottom half of the league is still very close. There's not a huge gap between top and bottom, so still everything to play for in terms of making it to the playoffs, even though we're still very early on in the season. But Chris, do you have any idea why some teams have 0.5 points?
No. I'm trying to...
Although it's quite funny, I'm not going to lie. It's quite funny.
Keep looking. If I can find it, I'll let you know.
I mean, if we have a fan that watches the Danish Metaligaen and wants to update us, that would be tremendous, because I'm not going to lie, I've never seen a set of standings where teams have 0.5 points. It does make it a little bit more interesting. Go for it.
Let me see if I can figure it. I'm going to see if I can figure it out.
Okay, because the reason I'm thinking about it is because it adds a whole third layer of points totals. That could you imagine if a team missed out on the playoffs by 0.5 points? They had pretty much the same records, but then 0.5 points was the difference. Maybe it's to do with the fact that a set of games was cancelled and they couldn't reschedule them.
That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's 6 teams.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. I'll keep looking. I will keep looking. If I can't find it, if anybody knows, then
yeah, I feel like that's one that we could kind of update with next week or the week after and be like, this is why. Here you go, guys. But yeah, I have a feeling it's because a load of games are cancelled. That's what my gut is telling me, because there's 6 different teams that got the 0.5 points, and they said, okay, instead of giving a team a win and a team a loss, just give every single team half a point, and that way it's even. Why wouldn't you just give every team 1 point then? is kind of my thought. Or just like give every team a win or something. I don't know. They got 0.5 points. The Danish league never ceases to amaze us, and this is why Chris and I like talking about European hockey, because we find these little things that really confuse us, but we have to know more.
Yeah.
So do you want to move on to the next league while we kind of figure that out as we go on?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So penultimately, in terms of the leagues we're looking at, we have the Norwegian League, the Fjordkraft Ligaen. This one's also loading from Free Sports. Not Free Sports. Why do I keep saying Free Sports? It's a Flash Scores.
I don't know why you keep saying Free Sports. I was curious.
Maybe because our guest was Chris Ellis last week and I miss him. But then we've got 10 teams here in the Norwegian League. There's a bit of a disparity, kind of similar to the Polish League, in terms of some of the teams that haven't been playing so well. So Frisk Asker, I should say, first place, 30 points. Vålerenga in second place. Strohammer, Lillehammer, both in third and fourth place, although the top three teams way above the rest of the league with at least 9 or 10 points ahead. Then you've got Mangelrud, you have Sparta Sarpsborg, then you have Sturgeon in 5th, 6th and 7th place. The Stavanger Oilers haven't had a very good season so far, although they've been a consistent Champions Hockey League team, sitting in 8th place with 12 points. Then you have the 9th and 10th place team, which is Gruna and Narvik, 7 points, 3 points respectively. Narvik, 1 win in 11 games, 37 goals allowed to 16 scored, and Gruna, 2 wins this season, 1 overtime or shootout loss, though, and they have scored less than half of the goals that they've conceded. So, not a very good start for those two teams. I think, kind of similar to the Polish League, we might already be start to seeing a lot of the teams that have already locked themselves in for the playoffs. Although that said, Gruna does have the chance to jump up. They've played pretty much the same amount of games as the majority of the teams in the league, so they have the chance to kind of jump up into that 7th or 8th spot at least if Sturgeon or Stavanger, the Oilers, have a bit of a rough patch. So, Chris, I don't know if you've been paying attention to that. What are your thoughts on the Norwegian League?
I've been kind of keeping half ear out, but I'm still trying to, find out what these half points are about. But I think that the Norwegian League again, it's one of these leagues. It's beginning to take shape, but nothing, kind of major really.
Yeah, it's kind of the top 3 teams have pretty much secured themselves a playoff spot at this point. I find it highly unlikely that Narvik's going to jump up. They might not even hit 30 points by the end of the season. Then you've got kind of Storhammer down to Sturgeon from 3rd to 7th. They're all fighting for kind of, or kind of Lillehammer in 4th to Sturgeon in 7th. There's kind of still that battle going on at the middle of the table. Yeah, there might be the chance for one of them to jump up if one of the other teams doesn't play so well, but I kind of feel like we found the top 3 teams already this season, and then kind of the next 4 or 5 teams, and then it's kind of a battle for that last playoff spot or the last 2 playoff spots. So
yeah,
it's going to be a fun league to look at regardless. At least they don't have 0.5 points to confuse us even more. But last, but certainly not least, let's move on because we're almost 50 minutes into this podcast already. Although it's been a long time since we did this, we wanted to make sure we took some care and attention to updating you with the stats as we go about it. When we resume week by week looking at these leagues, we won't obviously take as much time to go specifically into each league. So last but certainly not least, the French League Magnus, which there's not a huge gap between a lot of these teams, but that said, there hasn't been many games played either, so you can make from that what you will.
The reason for that is because while France is in a national lockdown again like we are, they're not playing.
Well, that would make sense. I knew it was obviously something virus related, but that makes sense, the fact that they've just decided to close up the league. Do we know how long that is for?
I think it's a month. It's similar to us, but they started a week or 2 before, so they might be coming out of it soon.
Okay, so probably by the time this video goes out, or this episode goes out, or before episode 14 goes out, then they might be back out of it, which would be good. So there's only one team left undefeated in the French League Magnus, which is Rouen. Top of the league, 6 wins in 6 games. Then you have Amiens, Bordeaux, Nice and Angers in the 2nd to 5th spots. Still all to play for, I should add here. Gap, Anglet, and Chamonix Mont Blanc at the 6th, 7th, and 8th spots. That rounds off the playoff spots. Then you have Mulhouse, Grenoble, Cergy Pontoise, and Briançon in 9th to 12th. There's obviously a lot of British players, I believe, playing for some of these teams in the French league, having mixed results depending on which team they're playing for. But like Chris mentioned, still all to play for because of the national lockdown. So I would imagine they'll resume once the lockdown is lifted and they can get back to playing. I mean, Briançon, 1 point in 4 games. They're played half the games than some of the other teams in the league. They still have plenty of an opportunity to jump back up and, find a playoff spot. Anything else you want to add on the French league, Chris?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not really a lot to add because they've not been playing.
Yeah.
See if Flash Scores just tells them when they're about to kick up. Because I know they were doing they've done a lockdown like we have here in the UK, and I'm not sure. I know they went into it before us, but I'm not sure if that was also a month or if it was a bit longer. Fixtures for the Magnus. You see, according to this, there's meant to be a game on Friday, but we'd have to see, and the rest then kick in December. So,
okay, so I guess we'll have to wait and see, folks. So that's everything for the scores. Now, Chris, you released a tweet on our Europuck podcast at Europuck Podcast on Twitter, and you decided to come up with a new game. So, why don't you take us through what this game is and let people get excited?
I have done this game on pretty much every single bit of radio I've done since I started radio at the age of 17. When it being sport related, and that is the predictions.
Hey!
Have a bit of a prediction competition. So we've had 1 week already. Week 2 is underway. So if you don't already follow us on Twitter and you want to take part, then be sure to follow us on Twitter because I post them on Sunday, our time. Normally early in the morning because I get up a lot earlier than my partner and just get it done. So you get like about 24 hours to put your predictions in, 10 games a week, and then hopefully they survive and don't get postponed.
Yep.
So the idea is that you put in your predictions for the week. So I give you a list of 10 games from across Europe throughout the week. You put in your predictions, and then at the end of the week, I tot up who's done the best, and I'm keeping track of who wins each week, and they get kind of a shout out on this podcast. And then also, I'm going to keep track as the weeks go on of who is leading overall. So if you play each week, you've got more chance of getting your name read out by us on this podcast.
Absolutely. So I've just currently got up the games that were taking place from last week, so the first week of predictions. I'll move it on slightly to this week to give you guys a look at it. But for example, this was all Chris, so thank him or be mad at him if you didn't win. We got, like, for example, the KHL, we got, some of the other leagues, we got the Swedish Hockey League, the Czech League. I like the fact, I think this works really well with our podcast, the fact that we look at so many different hockey leagues.
So I've tried to get, obviously, from as many different leagues as possible as I could, once the DEL starts, I'll put some of those in. Of course. But I can't do the Elite League or the French League at the moment. But I've done, so Norwegian, I've got the Liga, the SHL, the KHL, the Czech League, everything around that. And then if a game gets postponed, then I just take it off for that week.
Speaking of that, I've wanted to ask you this, and as you've been explaining it, I feel like we should have like bonus points if somebody predicts that a game's going to get postponed. I feel like that would just just to kind of add to the novel that is this ridiculous 2020 season. It would be wonderful, I think, if you could add like double points or something for like one that gets postponed or something. I just love that.
So this week, 2 games got taken off the list. So it was out of 32 points. So the way it works is you get 1 point if you get the winner correct. The joys with ice hockey is the fact that there's always a winner.
Yep.
So you get 1 point if you get the winner correct. You get 3 points if you get the score perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get a bonus point if you think the game's going to go to overtime, and it does.
Okay.
So you can get anywhere between 1 and 4 points per game. So this week it was out of 32. The winner with 10 points is Henrik, whose Twitter hashtag is Befriamig. I hope I pronounced that right. But yeah, so he got 10 points this week, 2 perfect scores, and then 4 winners as well. So 6 out of the 8 games he predicted the winner correctly, which is quite impressive. Everybody, which was game 7? Let me bring it back up again for me.
Game 7 was Rauman Luko versus Porin Assat. I've got it on the screen at the moment. This is the last week's, you mean, right?
everybody predicted. Yeah, that's last week's. So
Okay.
everyone predicted that Luco would win.
Okay.
But nobody predicted quite to the extent.
Interesting. Okay.
A 9-1 victory was in the end.
Yikes! Okay.
So no one predicted that, which I can kind of let off. So that was last week. This week is already underway. I think we've got very much the same kind of group of people taking part this week.
I've got the November 16th to 22nd, like the list of the teams up there. Yep. So you've got Lexans versus Frölunda, the Rapperswil-Jona Lakers versus Bern, SK St. Petersburg versus Tractor, the Stavanger Oilers versus Vålerenga, Zlin versus Boleslav, Geneva Servette versus Zurich, Hämeenlinna versus TPS Turku, Kunlun Red Star versus Akbars Kazan, Feyenoord BK against Luleå, and Klagenfurt against Red Bull Salzburg. I just wanted to make sure I read them out because obviously we've got people that listen to the audio version of this podcast and obviously can't see.
Followers on Twitter to take part. Yes. Now I haven't had a look at what people have predicted yet. I've seen they've come in, but I haven't put them into my spreadsheet. I'm not sure many people would have predicted Frölunda getting shut out.
Yes, I think that's very true.
I don't really think we're going to get any bonus points from that game. So I don't think many people would have predicted them getting shut out. And then what else have we had? So there's that game that's meant to be on today between Rapperswil and Bern, which starts in 40 minutes for us. So again, we've only had the one game so far from this week. So it will go out on a Sunday. So obviously this podcast will go out on Friday. So keep an eye on our Twitter on Sunday for the list. It will look exactly like the picture on screen. It will be a graphic with all of the games. And then, if you get that to us before the first game faces off on the Monday, you'll be in that week and you might get yourself read out by us.
Exactly. So the reward is getting a shout out on the podcast and a well done. So can you just give the winner from last week a shout out again? That would be wonderful.
Yep. So well done to Henrik, who got 10 points out of 32. And going into week 2 as well, because I'm going to keep it rolling, he has a 4-point lead. So not insurmountable, but some 6 out of 8 winners he got last week, which is quite impressive.
Indeed. So that's the new competition. Chris very much took the lead on that and was like, "Oh, I'm going to do this." I was like, "Wonderful, great." So thank you, Chris, for doing that, and we'll keep you updated with how it goes every single week. Let's talk about some stuff that's happened within the league, kind of more specific news or things that we're supposed to expect in the upcoming kind of weeks and months. And the first being regarding the DEL. The DEL in Germany, according to Corey Pronman, who is verified on Twitter, and he writes for The Athletic, so, I would say he's a reputable source regarding this. He says that the DEL in Germany is expected to announce sometime next week a mid-December start to their season with no fans in attendance. So we've obviously talked about the DEL and the struggles that they've had to postpone their season twice because of the virus and everything. Obviously the DL2 has been playing already this season without fans, which we've had a couple of people mention to us and that we've discussed, because obviously there's a lot of Brit players and Brit coaches and staff over in the DL2 getting some reps because the Elite League, either because they were there already or because the Elite League isn't running. But now we've got official confirmation, or relatively official confirmation, that sometime next week the DEL is going to announce they're going to start mid-December, which is interesting because it's going to be just before Christmas, so I'm not sure how they're going to do that. They're going to tell their players to kind of have Christmas a week early or something, so they can then kick off on December 25th. But then also no fans in attendance to start, which is kind of a given, let's be honest. So Chris, your thoughts on the DL season potentially starting mid-December with no fans in attendance?
Yeah, I mean, they've clearly had a look at all of the figures. So that was the big reason for the Elite League not starting was the monetary cost to it.
Yep.
So they clearly feel that there's kind of a navigation around that. Interestingly, that I saw obviously a lot of people then jumped on the draft picks that went and are currently contracted.
Yes.
In the DEL, do they Tim Stutzel, for example? Will he have one game there and then go to Sens camp, or something along that? I mean, I know that as he's injured at the moment. But
yeah, I feel like that's a big factor in it. Yeah, are they thinking, oh, should we just let him recover and then go to Ottawa and then kind of start his season there? Do we want to get him some ice time in Germany first so that he's kind of got a few reps in before he goes to Ottawa so he can have a good training camp? There's a lot of like different little pieces that are going into this, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it, and obviously they'll have thought long and hard about this. So we'll just have to see. Going to be, he said next week, but that was on Sunday, so I'm guessing at some point this week. Okay. And see what they say.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting that, in my opinion, I don't think they can hold it off much longer if they want to have a season. I think starting...
If they want to have anything, no.
Yeah, if they're wanting to have as full of a DEL or as a complete a DEL 2021 season as they can, if they push it into January, February, even March, for example, there's no point, if you ask me. There's no point in pushing it that late because, let's be honest, the NHL, yeah, they're thinking of starting in January. They've got millions and millions and millions of dollars backing behind them and sponsorships and TV deals. They have the ability, yeah, it's going to hurt their financials, but they have the financial backing to be able to figure things out, like we saw with the bubble last year. Like, no other league in Europe, apart from the Ukrainian league, managed to finish off their season because they knew that it would just cost too much and be too much of a hassle, and then the virus might infect a bunch of people and cause a load of problems down the line. So, at the end of the day, if the German league wants to start, and yeah, you might make the argument, starting the second week of January instead of starting the second week of December, is there a huge amount of difference there? You could get a couple of games in every week at that point, and then be, as opposed to finishing in, April or May, you could finish in March or early April if you really wanted to play it that way, or a couple of months further down the line. So I've got to be honest, I'm glad that the DL is looking to have a season. It's obviously smart that they're having it with no fans, especially given the current situation. The fact that there still isn't a vaccine widely available is the common sense thing to do. We obviously saw a lot of arenas around Europe allow loads of fans, then had to scale it back tremendously to the point where some of them are only admitting like 50 fans into an arena because things got so bad, or the country that they are playing in had kind of regressed that much. But yeah, I think, Chris, do you see that there's the opportunity that the DL could have as full of a season as possible? Yeah, it's not going to be the full, 50, 60 games that they usually have.
52 they normally have. I mean, if I was them, I'd go to 26 and play one home, one away, rather than two home, two away.
I agree.
And then not try and push it too far, to give yourself a proper break then before hopefully a full season, 21-22. I would go for a half season of 26 games, because the problem is again, we've seen it in football here, is if you try and cram the games in to get a full season, you just risk injury.
Yes.
You've got to remember these aren't the NHL players, again, that are used to playing, sometimes triple headers, or, they don't have like the world-class physios and the world-class facilities. So I think, to me, a half season of 26 would make more sense.
Definitely, and like you mentioned, it also gives them the opportunity that if a game is postponed or is cancelled because of positive cases, they could run it so they have one game every weekend or something for however many weeks.
Then if there is something that pops up, as you said, with postponements, or if a team has a case, then if you're only playing at weekends, for example, then you could do... Yeah, you could get it done. If you started in mid-December, you could be done at the end of March, just playing Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah, exactly.
But then if you're only playing at weekends, then, and I suppose you could make them all double headers, home and away as well, to further impact it. But then obviously if a case comes up, if you only played one team, it doesn't affect the rest of the league as much.
And it also means that they have the opportunity to, put a midweek game that needed to be rescheduled because they can't fit it in.
If you need to do that, then yes.
Exactly, and it also means that, say if a team has to go down for 3 weeks, it might mean that you might need to cram like the final week of the season with 3 games that week, but at the same time, if you're doing it towards the end of the season, a lot of players are already starting or relatively in-game form, so they're not as at risk of injury as if they'd done it 2 weeks into the season when they're still trying to get their reps under their belt. So it's going to be interesting to see. It's a constant thing that we're following as the season's gone along. We're hoping that the DL can get started and have some success. A lot of the other leagues around Europe have either kind of quietly gone about their business, like in the Finnish Liga, or they've had lots of cases. So hopefully patience has been a virtue for them, and it means that they'll be able to have a successful season. But speaking more about hockey that's already taken place over this last weekend, we had something take place hockey-related in the UK, and that was the NIHL streaming series that took place. So for those of you who don't know, this last week...
Still taking place.
Is it still taking place? When's it
they're
finish?
doing it over a few weekends.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, the article that I brought up did mention that, but I completely forgot, so thank you for reminding me. So yeah, for those of you who don't know, there is a NIHL, the National Ice Hockey League here in the UK, which is the second-tier league, or the second-tier group of teams underneath the Elite Ice Hockey League. They are playing... There's 3 different teams. It's Swindon, Sheffield, and... Who's the other one?
Milton Keynes.
Milton Keynes, that's the one. They are playing a group of kind of friendly games, I would say, or kind of like 3-team tournament competition games. They've got lots of players that usually play in the Elite League joining their rosters. They've got lots of like well-known Team GB players that haven't moved overseas that were signed with the NIHL when the Elite League postponed. And they're streaming all of the games online. You can buy a ticket. Did you manage to watch any of the games this weekend, Chris? Because I didn't.
No, I didn't. I was watching the golf, but I've kind of seen the aftermath to it and people's opinions. It is quite mixed.
Yeah.
But I think what it's important to bear in mind is that they're kind of using it as a test event for potential Elite League games. So there is such a monetary difference.
Yes.
Personally, I'm not convinced that just because the National League streaming thing went okay, that an Elite League thing would.
Yes.
Not being funny, but I've been doing it for the Lions for the last year.
Yeah.
So I'm not convinced, but yeah, hockey back in the UK.
Indeed.
It's promising, but again, I don't think that it's a sustainable thing. Similarly to, again, and we keep going back to it, but it's not the NHL with millions, and I think any ice hockey here is going to have fans in it before. So realistically, I think we're going to have one of these vaccines that's successful before we can have hockey back here particularly on a regular basis.
I completely agree, but to kind of keep things relatively positive, this weekend did seem to be a success, whether it be from the on-ice product, because they were playing behind closed doors. The stream, there were some mixed opinions on the stream as a whole, but for the most part, they were happy that it was there and happy to have hockey back, so UK hockey fans got something to watch. But this article that I found from the Yorkshire Post mentioned that 2,800 online tickets were sold across the weekend, with the ultimate aim being to convince other second-tier teams to come on board and hopefully, subject to government approval, start some kind of league campaign for the NIHL early in 2021. So if that's a possibility, maybe it might not necessarily be the Elite League, but maybe some of the NIHL teams could get together and maybe make it a kind of 5-6 team tournament. That could be a little bit more promising.
Maybe if there's teams that will, that feel that they can stream, then I'm sure, that's something to look into. I mean, I'm not going to speak for Matt, but I'm sure if they go, who can stream games, come into our league, and I'll be like, yep.
It's like we got you.
Trounced. Yep. We'll get trounced 15-1, but we'll play.
But at the end of the day, let's be honest. British hockey fans, all they want right now is hockey. And part of me was like, I really wanted to sit down and watch some of these games, but they were that really awkward time for me and my schedule, in the sense that I was either still like working and getting my videos out, or like talking to my girlfriend who's 5 hours difference in Canada. So it's like, I really wanted to sit down and get the chance to watch them, but it's like, other commitments get in the way. So on the one hand, it kind of makes you feel like, I really should have supported this because, like UK hockey, but at the end of the day, if it doesn't fit in your schedule, it doesn't fit in your schedule, does it?
As you are fully aware with me, I was very conscious of spending, getting a ticket, and then my internet just be like, nah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because my internet is poor. So that kind of, I was like, yeah, okay, I'll watch them on TV instead. But
and we've also
hopefully we can see more of it.
Yeah, we've also seen with some of the other Elite League like live streams and webcasts and stuff, they go down for large periods of time and they don't give refunds or anything. So it's kind of like, I can understand why some people would be hesitant to go, actually, we're going to spend £20 for 3 games and then 1.5 of them work, you know? Whether it be because of your internet or because the streaming, like the stream doesn't necessarily go so well. But it's a really interesting thing to look at, and hopefully the next couple of weeks they go well. Maybe the NIHL will get something going for 2021. Whether that will lead to the Elite League getting something going, I guess we're still going to have to wait and see. And I think Chris mentioned a good point. A vaccine is probably going to need to be widely available to pretty much everybody and have fans in attendance in order for it to be profitable. But, you know, baby steps, right, Chris? It's a good start. It's nice to see hockey back in the UK and some of the best British players getting the chance to get back on the ice and score some goals for their team. So that's good. Very happy to see that.
Nice to know that after such a long time away, they still know where the net is as well.
Oh, that's good. It's good to know. So we had an interesting question, Chris, that I would like to talk about. This is kind of the last thing we're going to talk about before we wrap things up, and we've got some bonus things to talk about, which, you know, will be uploaded on YouTube as we go along. But the last kind of thing for the main episode I want to talk about, Chris, is we got a great question from one of our regular viewers, at Nico Breakout on Twitter, and he asked the question, do you think the KHL will ever participate in the Champions Hockey League? And kind of what would that look like? How do you think it would go? Now, I'm going to kind of give my views on this, Chris, and then I want to get your thoughts on this. And you might have similarities, might have differences, because I thought this was a really good question. Because a bit of context for this, the Continental Cup that us British fans and a lot of the kind of lower tier leagues keep an eye on, like the Israeli hockey guys that we talked to a couple of weeks ago, they mentioned the Continental Cup was something big for their hockey nation as well. It's kind of the tier below the Champions Hockey League, Kazakhstan teams, UK teams, French teams, they kind of, and kind of Danish teams and everything like that. They compete for the Continental Cup to give them a chance to play in said Champions Hockey League. Now, the interesting thing and the reason why I wanted to bring this up is the fact that the Continental Cup used to have KHL teams in it. A video that I did recently on my YouTube channel where I was talking about Alexander Radulov's career. He won 4 Continental Cups while playing in the KHL in the late sort of noughties and early 2010s, you know. So there was a time when KHL teams were present in it. Given the fact that of the quality of some of the other teams present in the competition nowadays, would it make sense for KHL teams to be in that competition? Absolutely not. They'd wipe the floor with pretty much every single team that was there, and it wouldn't really be much of a competition. But with regards to the Continental Hockey League being in the Champions Hockey League, my opinion of it, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this afterwards, Chris, I think if they took any of the teams that were either middle of their conference to the bottom, I think it's a great idea. Only if they're a member of the Western Conference, though. Because we do not need a Kunlun Red Star or an Amur Khabarovsk or Admiral Vladivostok when they come back being in the Champions Hockey League, because let's be honest, that is going to be huge travel costs because they're right the other side of Russia and into China, obviously, so that's a huge travel. Whereas if you've got a team like Jokerit in it, I know there's already Finnish teams in it, but if you get Jokerit in it, or Dynamo Riga, or I don't want to say teams like SK St. Petersburg or CSKA Moscow or any of those teams, because I feel like if you take those big teams like the Akbars Kazans, the Avangard Omsk, it will just kind of become another Frölunda for the most part. And like the last thing we need is another Frölunda in the Champions Hockey League. Whereas if you get the teams that maybe struggle a little bit more or are more towards the bottom of the league or kind of in the bottom half of the league, like the Sevastov Sharapovets of the league, or I was going to say Amur, but no, the travel would be ridiculous. Or like the Vityaz Podolsks or something like that. Kind of those teams that, yeah, they might make the playoffs or they're pretty decent playoff teams, but they're not teams that go to the Gagarin Cup finals or the conference finals every single year. That would add those KHL teams into the league and make the league very competitive, but it wouldn't mean that, you know, there's a new kid on the block that comes and like beats up every single other kid and is like, this is my house now, you know? What are your thoughts on the KHL if they did join the Champions Hockey League?
It would obviously be a big shake-up. I think that don't forget that the Champions Hockey League wants to reduce the number of teams as well from 32 to 24.
Very good point.
And again, if you're saying the question I think is how would you police the KHL? So you say, okay, well, it's got to be Western Conference. I can imagine the Eastern Conference teams not being too happy about that to start with, but that's by the point. Then you say, right, okay, well, it can't be SKA or CSKA.
Okay.
So let's say, okay, the team that comes in fourth in the KHL gets Champions Hockey League. What if then one of the really big teams has a bad year and ends up in fourth? Do you say, well, you still can't do it?
I guess, yeah, I guess maybe to kind of add to that, like now that you've mentioned that, it makes me think, why not just one of the teams that doesn't make the playoffs then? You know, kind of like, yeah, it's kind of like...
But then why would they be in the Champions Hockey League? Because they're not champions.
It's a good point, it's fair, but then again, if we're talking about the overall quality of the leagues, a Dinamo Riga is probably going to do quite well, or decently well. They're going to do better than some of the smaller European nations, and Latvia is a European nation. If we've got teams from the UK and France going in there, why can't we have a team from Latvia, I think is the kind of arguing point.
Yeah, no, I can see that, but then I think the argument then would be that it would have to come out of the Latvian national championship.
Which is fair. Yeah, very fair.
Which is fair, but then I also think, like, so if you're adding a new team in, you've then got to take a spot away from another team. So do you then do you not have the invitational for the Continental Cup winner? That kind of makes that tournament kind of negated then. Do you take a spot away from, say, France and say the only way that a French team can get in is via the Continental Cup? I mean, definitely the first season, maybe the first two seasons, like the Elite League didn't have a spot. The Panthers got into the inaugural season because of winning the Continental Cup that year. So maybe you do that, but then I think that might hurt the development of the domestic ice hockey in that competition. So I think it would be quite a headache for them. I think then the KHL might want to go, well, hang on, we are, the second best league in the world behind the NHL. How come Sweden gets 5 spots and we only get 1?
See, my argument to that would be, okay, then why don't you just do, completely disregarding the KHL for the moment, because this wouldn't fall under them, although it could do. They're wanting to reduce the amount of teams anyway. Why not just do regular season champion and playoff champion from each of the different nations? Because then you don't need 5 different Swedish teams. Now, I know the overall quality of the game or the overall quality of the product might be noticeably, if not heavily, reduced if you've got more teams from lower tier nations coming in, which is fair. That's a fair argument to make. But do we need 5 Swedish teams or 5 Swiss teams in the league?
They are reducing the... So there's the 6 founding nations, and they get... The top 2 get 5, the middle 2 get 4, and the bottom 2 get 3.
Okay. So
the 32 teams we've got now, they already fill 24 of them, and then there's just 8 from elsewhere.
Yeah.
Now, the shake-up was going to limit that down to 4. So the top 2 only got 4, whether the middle 2 only get 3, and the bottom 2 only get 2 now. That obviously dramatically brings it down to 18. But then you'd still only get 6 places for other people.
So how about why not go the 6 founding teams? They get both their playoff.
Well, it's the 6 founding countries. That's the thing.
The 6 founding countries. So they each get 2 spots, right? So that's 12.
That's 12.
And then every single other team, every single other nation gets 1 spot.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing. I don't know for sure because I haven't looked into each league in detail, but there must be other leagues around Europe that do it similar to the Elite League in the fact that our league winner gets Champions Hockey League and then below that gets Continental Cup.
Yes, I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, you're right.
No, but I think there's a lot to be said for the Champions Hockey League being for champions.
Yes.
I've never really agreed. It's the same in football. I've never really agreed with the team that comes in 4th or 5th getting a spot.
Yeah, exactly. So
that should be the Champions League.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of the argument that you made earlier, in which, like, oh, why should the 4th place KHL team be in there? Why should the 4th place Swedish league or the Swiss league? So
that's my argument.
No, absolutely, and I think that's a very fair argument to make. Like, if you're going to call it the Champions Hockey League, then have the from the 6 founding countries. This is like Odd Man Rush's remaking of the Champions Hockey League, right? You're welcome here, Champions Hockey League. You can take the idea, but I'm trademarking it. So ask for permission first. So why not just have the 6 founding nations that created the Champions Hockey League as it stands today, because there was a previous one, but this is the current Champions Hockey League. Each of them get their regular season and their playoff champion. Now, if that's the same team...
Or second place.
Or the other team that made the playoff finals if the same team wins both. So that's 12 teams already. How many other nations have a team in the Champions Hockey League?
I can look it up. I think it's 8.
I think it's 8. So then that's another 8 teams. So that's a 20...
Which takes you to 20, so then you need another 4.
Okay, so you need another 4, so just add a couple of other nations in there. Add Latvia in there.
Yeah, but make one, obviously, the Continental Cup winner.
Yep, Continental Cup winner, absolutely. So then you need 3
8,
more.
9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, there's 12 countries with spots. So you make 12 places from the 6 founding nations.
Yep.
Then another 6 places, that makes 18.
Yep.
Add in the Continental Cup winner, that's 19. And then you'd need another 5.
So then just find 5 other nations in Europe that don't have a team in the Champions Hockey League. I'm sure you could find some. Or just make it a 20-team league.
Or make,
just add
or
one.
Just do.
Just like add one from Latvia and make it a 20-team league, you know?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of ways. Obviously, the number of places given to each league is decided by the league ranking.
True, yeah. But then again, that doesn't mean they're champions because they came 4th place in the regular season.
Well, yes. So obviously, because Sweden, Switzerland, Germany, Finland, Czech Republic, and Austria are founding members, they get extra teams.
Interesting that Austria gets extra teams. They're not exactly like up there in terms of...
But it's because they're a founding member.
Exactly, which is really interesting. It's really interesting, kind of like the politics behind it as well. But I mean, we could sit here and talk about the Champions Hockey League and the way that it's run for a very long time.
We should make this a bonus episode.
Maybe we should. But yeah, so will the KHL ever participate in the Champions Hockey League? I don't think so. Do I think they should? Probably not. So that's where we stand on that. But yeah, I think on that note, Chris, I think this is a really good place to end today's episode. We've been going for roughly 90 minutes, including the bonus content that you guys will see later on. Later on in the week as we prepare for the next episode. I should mention 2 things before we finish up. Firstly, we're hoping to have a really good guest on the show. We've just finalised yesterday when we were recording this on the Tuesday, so on Monday or Tuesday morning, I can't remember which now. Every day feels the same now. But we've pretty much finalised a guest that British hockey fans, you are absolutely going to love this guest.
If you're a British hockey fan, then make sure that you have the notification bell on for when this goes live.
Absolutely, because this is going to be a very, very good guest to have. The only kind of teaser I'm going to give you is he's an active player still. He's still playing, and he's playing overseas at the moment from the UK. So I know we've had a lot.
Really narrow it down too much.
No, exactly. But I know there's a lot of fans from other European countries that listen to the podcast that might think we've gone quite British people heavy on the guests, especially over the last couple of weeks. But I mean, like, we're 2 British guys, we're using the contacts that we have. It's an English-speaking podcast. There's a lot of different players from different players and kind of staff and people from different leagues that English might not be a very good talent of theirs. So if you want us to have a guest on the show, do let us know, whether it be on the YouTube comments, on social media, or our personal Twitters. Like, do let us know. We would love to know who you want, and we'll do our best to try and get them. And also, the Europuck podcast, The Final Thing, has an Instagram page now, at Europuck Podcast, basically the same as our Twitter handle. So go and check us out on Instagram, drop us a follow. We're going to try and upload relatively the same amount of stuff as we do on our Twitter page, and make sure you check in a couple of days after this video goes out, because Chris will have the new set of predictions up. So, yeah. Yep. On that note, let's end today's episode of the Europuck podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone, whether it be the audio version or the video version or YouTube. We really do appreciate it. And if you want to keep updated on all things Europuck podcast throughout the week, or send us your thoughts, opinions, or questions either from today's show or for our next show next week, you can follow us on Twitter at Europuck Podcast. And if you enjoyed listening to either or both of your hosts today, which of course you did, then you can follow myself on Twitter at OddmanRushYT up there, or Chris at Chris_Gadsby over there. Thank you very much for watching, guys. We'll see you again next time. Have a good one, folks.